Hello, friends, and welcome to episode number 45 of Nostalgia Talk. I'm James, and this episode of Nostalgia Talk is a very special one because it's a tribute. Today, we are honoring the life of the one and only legendary animator Abe Levitow. Who the hell is Abe Levitow? I'm sure some of you guys are probably asking. You may not know his name, but you're more than likely familiar with his work. Abe Levitow was an animator for Warner Brothers, UPA, Sesame Street, and MGM, most specifically Looney Tunes, Mr. Magoo, Tom and Jerry. And for Looney Tunes, actually, he was Chuck Jones's associate on many cartoons, and I wrote a list of them in my phone, such as Rabbit Seasoning, Beanstalk Bunny, Nightmare Hare, My Little Duckaroo, One Froggy Evening. I almost said One Foggy Evening. Alibaba Bunny, Hood Daffy, Hare-Way to the Stars, Steel Wool, Touche and Go, What's Opera Doc, and went on to direct and also co-direct short films such as Baton Bunny, Martian Through Georgia, A Witch's Tangled Hair, Catty Cornered, Surfboard Cat, Guided Mouse-ille, and the 1962 film Gay Purr-ee featuring Judy Garland. Abe, unfortunately, is no longer with us, but if he was alive, this year would be his 100th birthday. And so to honor Abe's memory, joining me is his daughter, Judy Levitow. Judy, welcome to Nostalgia Talk.
Thank you. Thank you, James. I mean, we were not even aware it was his 100th birthday. So you're the one who alerted us to that fact. So thank you. I'm really excited.
Well,
You.
I'm very
The
excited
young,
to.
yeah,
I'm
I
really excited
know.
to have you here. This is, and not only that, this has been a pretty exciting week for me. I get to do Nostalgia Talk and honor the life of a legend. And last night I went to an Avril Lavigne concert, and it was awesome.
Nice. I
Mhm.
like her.
Oh yeah, this concert was so wicked. Like I still have all my life I've been good, but now, whoa, what the hell stuck in my head? Like it's playing on repeat rent free in my brain right now when I really should be thinking about cartoons at the moment for this. Well, let's be honest.
Well,
I feel. Oh, go ahead.
we can postpone it if you want.
Uh, well, I mean, let's be honest. I feel like punk music really is created by people who like cartoons. So I think it all kind of works out.
Sure, yes,
Mhm,
for sure.
mhm. All right. So, first of all, before I get into the first question, would you mind telling me what it is that you do, or what you've done in your life?
Well, at the present, I have been working in broadcasting. I do traffic reports for the Los Angeles area for various radio stations. So I've been doing that for, oh gosh, 20, 30 years now. So it's been a long time. I did work in animation for a little bit after
Oh, that's
college.
cool.
Yeah, after my dad died. Richard Williams was kind enough to give a struggling college graduate a job. So I worked on Raggedy Ann and Andy in New York City, and it was really quite amazing as on retrospect. I mean, he hired some of the most brilliant cartoonists who are now, they themselves are legends, although I left the business. Eric Goldberg was there. I was his assistant.
Oh,
Tom
really?
Cito. Yeah, I was Eric's assistant,
Yeah,
believe it or not.
the reason that I find that so cool is because I met Eric a couple of years ago.
Yeah, Eric, Dan Haskett was there. I mean, all these guys, they were super talented. I was an art major, so I did, I knew how to draw, I knew how to hold the pencil and everything. But anyway, I ended up leaving because I wanted to do other things. But I followed their careers, and they're just, they've done amazing in the business. So
Mm.
that was great. And so then I kind of found my way into broadcasting. So I've been doing that. And now I'm kind of do more writing and performing and just trying to, I'm going a little bit in a more personal direction, but that's cool. So
Wow.
Yeah, and I have a brother and a sister. I have a brother and a sister too, so I'm not the only.
Right. Yeah,
They're
because
all.
I remember in the email you had sent me after I had reached out to you guys, I saw their names CC'd in it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
hello to
My
go ahead.
Roberta, my sister Roberta, she's worked in theater for many years and as a director, and then developing new works in Africa. She's traveled to Africa, and my brother teaches Yiddish. He's a Yiddish teacher in the Bay Area.
Wow.
So we're very diverse.
Wow. Well, hello to the entire Levitow family if they are listening.
Yes, they will
Mhm.
be.
Awesome. All right. So let's begin with what was it like to grow up the way that you did with your dad working for some of the most legendary studios in the animation world?
Well, this is the interesting thing, James, is that at the time, animation was like the poor style. It's like for some reason, after my dad died, it's become like animation is it's like it's glorified now. At the
Mhm.
time it was like it was a job. I mean, and not that it was, my dad loved his work. And that's one thing I saw was a person who loved going to work every day. He studied art in his off time. Um, he was always taking life drawing classes. Um, but he went to work in the morning and he'd come home at what 5, 6. It was like it was it wasn't that. I just thought everybody's that, I didn't think it was anything unusual. And I remember when they finished Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol, um, was the first animated special, right? It was the first animated special for TV.
Let's
Um,
see. I'll Google it.
or first animated Christmas special. It was a first on something. And I remember writing it on the chalkboard, like, watch my dad's show. But it was like, I don't know, people are like, uh-huh, yeah, right. I don't know. I was not like it was, wow, your dad works in cartoons. They were just, and I grew up in the Valley where a lot of people worked in the industry. A lot of, you know, kids of actors and so it was like it was not it was just like kind of it was very normal. And my dad was he had like his friends from high school. He was a shy guy.
Mhm.
It was not like he was out there like going to premieres and all that stuff. He was shy, and they didn't have big premieres for cartoons like now. Like he worked on uh Gay Purr-ee. Gay Purr-ee was one of the first animated full length films, right? I mean, I'm not great on the exact details,
Well, you were
but
correct earlier
um,
that Mr. Magoo's Christmas special was the first ever fully animated Christmas special. Gay Purr-ee, I believe that the very first ever animated feature film ever was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. But Gay Purr-ee was the
o-
first animated film from Warner Brothers.
okay, yeah, right, 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 yeah. And so, I mean, it's not like they have big. Now they walk the red carpet, but
Yeah, it's crazy.
no, we didn't do any of that. It
Mhm.
was like they would finish it and they go, oh, they'd have a screening like at the studio. So
Mhm.
I think I remember going to the studios and watching it then. It's just the studios, the people who worked on it.
So it's
And
so for the screenings, like were the films like done and it was just a way of showing, okay, this is what we've done. Does it work?
yeah, it was a screening like for the crew and their family. It was not fancy, not a big deal. It was just um it was I mean, I'm sad Dad does not see how revered animation is now because he didn't really get to see it. Like
Mhm.
when he died, he was 50, it was 1975. Animation was still not, they didn't have DreamWorks, they didn't have Pixar, they didn't have, it was, even though they were working on the classics like Bugs Bunny, Roadrunner, all that, it was a job. It was a, they just went in, they did their job, you know, he'd talk about little in studio, personality things at night, it's like, oh, so and so, blah, blah, we're trying to do this, but I was a kid, I didn't really get that. It was, oh, that's what they talk about at work. But
Okay.
I remember he went to Europe. They brought him over to Europe. I think it was went to the Zagreb Film Festival. It was before he died, so it was like in the early 70s. And in Europe, they cartoons so much differently. And he was like, he said, wow, when I meet people, they're so excited to meet me. Like it was totally different in Europe than it was in America. Like here, they were kind of like, Bugs Bunny, I don't know. Like since he died, Bunny's become huge, and the Roadrunner. But at the time, it was a job.
Mhm.
It's just, it's a funny thing.
Mm.
You
Uh,
just don't know.
And also something I should mention that I forgot to mention in the intro, with this week in the States at least, because I'm in Canada, with this week having been Memorial Day, Abe also was a soldier in World War II, I think.
He was, yeah.
Okay.
He was in the Signal Corps. Is that what it's called?
I'm not
Do you know much about
sure.
that?
Not really, but
Yeah,
I have relatives who fought in it, but I don't
he
know
did
my
not fight.
history.
He was not a fighter.
Okay, well,
They
okay,
sent
fight's the wrong word. I had relatives who had involvement in it, I'll say.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, they sent him to New York, and he was in a training films is what they did. And uh so he was, I think it was in Astoria, New York, and he met he met Stan Lee, was became one of his lifelong friends.
Oh my
And
God.
they corresponded for years. And Stan, I mean, Stan was, we have letters from Stan where he talks about how he struggled in the early days. Like you just think, oh, Stan Lee, he just made these cartoons and he was successful. Like he's for so many years. And so they were good friends. And let's see, who else did he meet there? He met Sam Cobain. I don't know if you know him, but he became a New Yorker cartoonist, but they were very famous. Like he, the guy who did Sad Sack by George, God, I forget him, Baker.
Let's
Um,
see.
like all these cartoonists that went on to have big careers. They were, they made these training films in New York, the war. So that's how he spent the war.
So he was
Was
still that's good. He was still doing what he loved while he was in the war.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. He served making the training film. So yeah, and I think Stanley was a writer there. He was a
Wow,
writer. My dad was, yeah. My dad was, but they became friends. They were their whole life. So,
that's
um,
cool.
yeah.
Mm. Now, did you get to know Stan Lee from the friendship that he and your dad had?
Uh, I didn't. Stan always lived in New York,
Hmm.
you know, in LA. So I think they saw each other a couple times, but it was mostly correspondence. And I didn't know really until after he died, and I found these letters, and I was like, wow. they were really good friends.
Wow.
They were,
No,
and
that's
Stan was always trying to get my dad to work with them. He's like, "Come on, Abe, we need to do something together." And I think they were doing them. My dad got sick. It was just very bad timing.
well,
So
if your dad had worked with Stan Lee on Marvel Comics, like if they had co-created, as you were talking about them, the possibility of them working together, like if they had co-created Marvel Comics, my dad and my friends and I were big fans of like the Marvel films. I just saw Doctor Strange, and it would be interesting to see the opening credits say based on the comics by Stan Lee and Abe Levitow, because then people would be more familiar with him, I think.
yeah. I think people who work in the industry name, but outside of the industry, he's not so well known.
Yeah.
So
That's exactly why I thought that this episode would work.
I just think it's so great. And yeah, I'm so happy to meet you, and I appreciate your appreciation of the art. It's just it's really wonderful.
Well, I came across your dad's work from. I'm a huge Muppet and Sesame Street nut, and I have a VHS tape that has one of the animated I know that your dad didn't do that much for Sesame Street. Like I think about maybe 2 or 3 little films, and one of them was it was basically kind of the song. It was a song that was reused a few times, but it was written differently. That was animated by your dad. It was called Willy Wimple. Willy Wimple went a boatin', making dirty water here, pouring stuff there till the gunk was everywhere. Now, and it was kind of like to teach environmentalism, and I had read on the Muppet Wiki it was animated by a fellow named Abe Levitow, and then I was watching Looney Tunes and I see his name in the opening credits, and I was like, "Oh, that guy!"
Oh, that's so funny.
So
Yeah, he
that's how I
did
came
like
into this.
he did a lot of side jobs. I remember that.
Yeah,
You know,
the other Sesame Street one I remember was I hope I'm saying this right. Mr. Tweak tried to sleep, but the man above him would snore, and the man below him would sneeze, and he'd basically try to shut them up. Finally, it's quiet for like a second, and then finally it starts all over again.
that sounds funny.
As I was kind of
Yeah, I don't know.
Go ahead.
But
As I was kind of rewatching all of these clips, I looked at the Willy Wimple character, and I kind of noticed that he looks a little bit like a younger relative of Elmer Fudd and Mr. Magoo.
oh, yeah.
Like he's got
Well,
that huge nose that they had, and the very very round head that they had.
yeah. Well, sometimes they use the same character, designs.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, obviously, you had said that you went to the screenings of the finished films when they were done. Did you ever actually get to watch your dad like in the studio doing animation? Like, did he ever bring you guys with him?
Yeah, he would, a few times a year he'd drag her and yeah, we met Chuck Jones, because he worked with Chuck for so many years, and I remember, he would just bring the kids in because we'd be like, "How do you make cartoons, Daddy?" So we'd go in and we'd see the guys, doing the thing, and the ladies in the ink and paint department, and the story department. Yeah, we usually would get a tour of his. I remember we went to UPA. I remember seeing 1001 Arabian Nights. Do you remember that? I remember going to that premiere. It wasn't a premiere, it was just a screening. It was, yeah, Aladdin. Mr. Magoo was in it. Mr. Magoo. Of course, Mr. Magoo was in 1001 Arabian Nights.
I had a feeling because when you mentioned that you toured UPA and you got to watch that's when I kind of figured it was probably a Mr. Magoo thing.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah,
Hmm. That's
we
really
usually
nice.
would, you know, yeah, it was, but it was, I don't know. I didn't know it was, that's where your dad works. It was like he works at a gas station, he works in insurance, it was just like that thing. But yeah, like I said though, like my dad really, he loved his job. It was like he loved going to work every day. And you know, it was all about the jokes and making people laugh. And so a very gentle, funny, kind of quiet guy. He just um he loved kids. He at like family gatherings, the kids would always be around him, and he would draw them little cartoons. He'd be
Aw.
like drawing, whatever cartoon he was working on. There was Bugs Bunnies going out, um and they would just climb all over him. Kids were, I don't know. Yeah, he loved kids and he liked to entertain, and yeah.
Hmm. He definitely seemed like a very entertaining kind of a guy from what I could tell in some of the short films that he directed himself. There was one that he and Chuck Jones kind of co-directed together that I mentioned in the intro. It was called Baton Bunny. And that was the one where Bugs was conducting an orchestra. And yeah, and he's being irritated by a fly. And basically the whole show is him doing the orchestra by himself, trying to kill the fly in the most slapstick of ways.
Right. Yeah.
Mm.
That's a really good cartoon. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Can you stop that one? It was that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a really good one. Yeah. So when you would go to the studios, the thing that I was kind of wondering, because like, of course, the director, usually in this case Chuck Jones, would of course have. When I was in film school, we learned about what's called a director's vision, but I noticed that Chuck wasn't really the writer for some of these cartoons. Usually, those cartoons were written by people like Warren Foster and Mike Maltese. Do you know if there was ever like meetings with the animators and the writers and the directors about how they wanted them to look? Because when I'm writing, I usually always like to visualize how something looks, even if I'm not going to be directing it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yes, they had those meetings. They had story meetings. I mean, and like I said, sometimes there'd be like little personality things. I know it's like the writer wanted a certain vision, Chuck would want a certain vision. I mean, we do have some notes about, God, what movie was it? Maybe it was Gay Purr-ee. Like, my dad actually saved a lot of the notes that he would, because Chuck was working two jobs at the time. I think he got in trouble for working. So he would just he would give my dad notes about Gay Purr-ee, and it was like, and they would kind of, go back and forth who would get their vision up there, so sometimes it's a little contentious. And but yeah, they would meet with the writers. They would have the storyboards, on the wall, and there was always, I think, intense discussion about, whether Bugs is gonna go, into the hole now or over here. It was like, it was all yeah, took a lot of discussion. It's all in the timing too. That's what my dad always said.
So in
Timing is so important.
So in other words, like in the case of Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck at some of these story meetings, and any regular Looney Tunes fan know exactly which cartoon I'm referencing by this. It basically was like, would you like to shoot me now or wait till you get home? Shoot him now! Shoot him now! Shoot him now! You keep at this. He doesn't have to shoot you now. So that was basically what went on in the meetings. Do we want him to shoot Bugs now or wait till he gets home? Shoot him now! Shoot him now!
I mean, and I remember to the studios, you would just hear guys laughing, at the other end of the hall. It would just be like laughter, and I remember I thought, God, that's a cool place to work, where people are just laughing out loud. You know, it's like that's where you want to be. So
Mm. Mm. One of
yeah,
my
you're always trying to.
One of my very favorite Bugs Bunny short films that your dad worked on, and also one I mentioned in the intro, it's called Nightmare Hare. I don't know if you'd remember that one. Maybe some of the listeners don't, but basically in it, Bugs Bunny is under a hair dryer, or in his case, an ear dryer, because his ears are basically used as hair a lot. And so he gets an apple falls on the hairdryer and knocks him on the noggin, and as he's unconscious, it's the whole cartoon is just a dream sequence that he has of him inside this King Arthur type universe, even being introduced to a wizard named Merlin, whose last name is apparently Monroe. My name is Merlin Monroe instead of Marilyn Monroe. And he ends up turning Merlin into a horse, and he unzips this horse costume, and then more and more and more horse costumes come out of it. So it's basically like he's cursed. I love how Bugs Bunny is always smarter than everyone in these cartoons. And at the
Oh,
very end,
you know,
finally,
I don't know. I'll have to look it up.
okay.
Yeah.
So at the very end, Bugs Bunny awakens from his unconsciousness, and he's like, "Oh, what a dream that was!" And he sees a horse that looks identical to the one he turned Merlin into, and he's a little bit weirded out because he's like, "What the hell just happened?" And he looks at the viewers, and he says, "Nah, that's impossible. Couldn't happen." And then you hear a voice off screen going, "All right, Merlin, giddy up!" And then Bugs does this surprised double take to the audience, like pupils dilated, like he looks so surprised. And I gotta say, if your dad animated that shot, that is like one of the best shots of animation I have ever seen.
Wow. I don't know.
That's okay. That's okay, but
Oh,
that's pretty impressive the way that he did that. I actually found a Looney Tunes cartoon that I really loved when I was a kid. I don't think your dad worked on this one, but it had a very similar shot. Bugs was being interviewed by a big TV personality, and it was like one of those. It's kind of like what you and I are doing now, like video chatting from a top secret location. It's not that secret. So Daffy's kind of jealous and wants the attention, and Bug's like, the only way I'm gonna get him to screw off is if we put him on the air. And so finally he puts Daffy on the air, and Daffy's like, "Will my friends see me on TV?" And Bug says, "Well, 40 million other people will as well." Daffy faints, and similar to Nightmare Hare, pupils dilated.
it's a good move. What can I
It is a
say?
very good move. It definitely shows some kind of physical emotion.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I don't know.
So
Go ahead.
talking about all these old school Looney Tunes cartoons with Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, that makes me wonder. You said you got to know Chuck Jones. Did you ever get to meet Mel Blanc?
Um, I think we met him like in the studio. I mean, it's not like he hung out at the house or anything.
Right.
I but I think once we were touring, he was there. And as a kid, I'm like, "Ugh, hi," and I remember Daws Butler did come to our house though once.
Oh, that's
I
cool.
do remember that because he was doing all these voices. He was doing all these voices, like he just like ran through all this stuff, and I was like, yeah, I was so amazed. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
wow,
Mm.
that's amazing. Yeah,
That
but
that's
no,
cool.
yeah, I mean, is that like he hung out with them at home? Like he worked with them, and then at home he was very quiet. He only had, he had his small social group. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Okay. Well, that's so cool that I've interviewed quite a few people who are actually mentored by Daws Butler, so I always love hearing about Daws Butler. He seemed like a very funny guy. I mean, Huckleberry Hound is one of my very favorite animated characters ever.
Yeah. Yeah, he was very, I mean, I just remember he was funny, he was outgoing, like to, kind of show off his skills, which were many. So yeah, he was he just seemed like a really nice guy.
He was smarter than the average bear. I love I love that stuff. So
Yeah.
so as you were saying in 1975, your dad very sadly passed away, and if you don't want to talk about it, you absolutely 100% don't have to. That's fine. But what was that like for you guys?
Mm, it was very hard, very hard.
Hmm.
As you can imagine, I mean, my dad he was just like the light in our family, it was pretty rough, like, because he got cancer. It was bone cancer. So he was supposed to go work on The Cobbler and the Thief for Richard Williams. Richard was lobbying for him to go back to London, because he'd worked with Richard on Richard Williams' Christmas Carol. So Richard was trying to get him to go back and do The Cobbler and the Thief. Oh, and no, and also Raggedy Ann and Andy in New York, which is
Oh
what I
yeah.
worked on. He wanted my dad to direct it, but he got sick, and so it was really sad.
I bet,
And I
yeah.
don't mind talking about it, but yeah, no, I didn't expect it.
Hmm.
The last thing I ever expected. And he was like the first person I knew who died, and he happened to be my dad. So it was bad. I finally went to therapy many years later. But yeah, no, it was sad. It was really, really very sad for it was
Hmm.
rough.
So, what do you think he would think now about the way that animation has kind of changed? Because now there's not a lot of traditional animation stuff, and what they do with like computer animation, it's cool. Like I just
Mhm.
recently saw the Bob's Burgers movie, which was 2D animated, and it felt like a real comeback to 2D animation because again, there's not a lot of it. But with 3D animation, you've got classics like Toy Story and Shrek and Monsters Inc. and Finding Nemo and Frozen and Tangled and all that other stuff. What do you think your dad would think of all this?
Um, you know, I think he would have loved that the art form has just blossomed, that there's so many different kinds. He was traditional. He got into it because he loved drawing. He was a draftsman, and like I said, he was always studying, always was taking life drawing classes for as long as I remember. And so I mean, I think just the fact that animation, it has its own category at the Academy Awards. I mean, that was unimaginable. Like, I think they gave out an Academy Award to shorts, before he died, like Bugs Bunny. But the fact that animated features has its own category at the Academy, I it blows my mind sometimes. I'm like, it's come so far. It's just come so far. I mean, he would love that. Like, he would have been an emeritus dude now,
Hmm.
so I think he would have really, really, really enjoyed it.
Hmm.
So I think he would have embraced the change with computers. It's kind of a different art form, but um I think we can appreciate all the different kinds of art forms.
Yeah, it's
Doesn't.
experimental, is what it is.
Hmm.
Especially with the movie Tron, because I think that was one of the earliest uses of CGI in film, and then next thing you know, they start using it more and more in films, and then finally Toy Story, the first ever fully CGI film, comes out, and it's a massive success. And now they have Lightyear coming out in a couple of weeks.
saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a Toy Story kid, so I'm really, really excited.
Yeah, it's fun.
Man, this has been
I
an
think I have.
exciting month.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I love your enthusiasm
Oh, well,
for
thank you.
amazing. So now tell me about you. You went to film school or you graduated
Mhm.
or
Yep,
what's
I went to
going
film school. I took 3 years of film school, and then I did an internship. So basically, I did film school on campus for about a year and a half, and by second year, basically everyone was going to be directing films and like individual films. You could have a group, but everyone in your group still had to do individual films. And so I went to do a sound test for my film, and then the pandemic shut everything down, but I still managed to do a student film because so the assignment was just kind of reconceived. And
Mhm.
so I just kind of did that from home, did my last year of film school from home, and then I did an internship for school. And as part I had to do the internship so I could graduate. It was at a rental facility for film equipment, and then they hired me. So I had been working there. And actually, talking about animation, I also work with an animation studio. I'm not an animator, but
Wow. What city you in? I don't know.
I'm in the suburbs of Halifax, Nova Scotia, in Canada.
Right, right. Oh my gosh, you are out there.
Yeah.
That's gonna,
East Coast for me, West Coast for you.
yeah. No, but it's supposed to be beautiful.
Yeah, we've got
But
some nice weather. We got some nice weather today. Like it's so bloody hot right now. We've gotten although it is still kind of cloudy and breezy at the moment.
yeah. Well, after I worked in New York at Raggedy Ann, I came back to LA and I worked for a little while at Hanna-Barbera. And there are a lot
Nice.
of Toronto graduates from
Yeah,
Sheridan College in Toronto.
yeah. Toronto seems to be a big hub for Canadian. And Toronto and Vancouver seem to be real hubs for Canadian film.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, so are you going to come to LA or what are your plans?
I
I,
don't.
I'm going to get.
I don't know. That's a good question. It's something I've thought about. But there's a lot of things that I still want to do before I really. And I am still like I'm the new guy in the film industry. So right now it's just a case of trying to make sure that the pieces all fit together in my mind as I'm continuing to gain new experience. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And
Yes.
I actually
I
want
think
to do I actually want to do like writing, and one of the things that I want to write for is actually Looney Tunes. So
do they have Looney Tunes? There's still Looney Tunes?
there's still Looney Tunes. I don't did you see Space Jam: New Legacy? Okay, that came
I
out
have a
last
couple.
year and it was awesome.
I have to admit, I have seen animated films. It, I get emotional.
That's
It kind of,
understandable.
yeah, I don't know. Gravitated to live action films because I don't know, it makes me sad seeing all these animated films and I'm like, well, my dad didn't get me.
Oh, I totally
I
understand,
don't know.
you know.
I haven't
Cuz
really
it's
kept
like
up on it.
yeah, I mean, it's like what you and I were talking about, you know, like him not being able to see how animation has blossomed. And here we are now, it keeps on changing and changing and changing. And, you know, a legend like him is just isn't there to see it. I'm sorry if that upsets you, me saying that, but
No, and I know that, but that's why I'm really, my siblings and I are thrilled that you out of the blue, is like want to honor your dad, and it means a lot to us. I'm just really touched, and I'm all for getting his, because he's often overlooked because he
mm-hmm.
died. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And it's some of these guys lived into their 90s and they just, because they were around, they got interviewed more. And so anytime we can promote my dad, I'm really happy. It makes us all happy, because I think he deserves a really good spot in
Mm,
the history of things. Yeah.
absolutely. And like in the whole world of animation, again, like I said, he's legendary for his work as a director, as an animator, and like he did like some of the biggest animated cartoons in the world. Like some of the cartoons that I mentioned in the intro, like What's Opera Doc and One Froggy Evening, those have actually been listed among the top 50 greatest cartoons of all time. And that is pretty friggin' cool. Especially
Yeah.
when, yeah. And then coming out of that and then going into Sesame Street, which was brand new when your dad was working on it. And again, he didn't work that much on it, but it was still a very, very new show. And of course, working with UPA, Tom and Jerry, and those are pretty legendary things as well. So I'm very happy that that I get to keep your dad's memory alive.
Yeah, no, thank you so much.
Well, thank
Really
you.
appreciate
Is there anything you want to say to wrap up?
it. Let's say I had something and then it went out of my head.
Don't you just hate
hmm,
that?
yes. Um, oh, a couple of those cartoons that you mentioned are in the Smithsonian. The, like I
Oh
know,
yeah.
One Froggy Evening is, What's Opera Doc is, like they're actually in the Smithsonian, the known for the best cartoons ever made, I guess.
Yeah.
So and I don't have a full list. Like I said, I'm not an animation historian.
And that's okay.
And I have met so many other people who know my dad's career, but I'm definitely I'm so appreciative of people like you who you know more than me and when he worked on them. And but he I mean, it really means a lot to me and my family.
Well,
So,
well, that means a lot to me. Thank you for saying that. That's very kind.
yeah.
Well, Judy, thank you very
Yeah.
much for joining me on Nostalgia Talk tonight. I really enjoyed getting to know more about your dad, because I mostly just know him for his career. Now I'm hearing all this cool behind the scenes stuff, his friendship with Stan Lee, which I think a lot of people I know are going to be like, holy crap, he knew Stan Lee. That's friggin' awesome. Because again, we're all Marvel people. So that was very marvelous to hear.
Yeah, Stan kept going, Abe, let's work together. We got to together. Like he was a pusher. And of course my dad is like, yeah, yeah, we will. And I'm like, damn, you missed a opportunity. But Stan didn't really take off till after he died anyway. So,
Yeah.
it's like,
Hmm. Well, Judy,
oh
thank you.
well.
Judy, thank you again for joining me for this very insightful and very interesting discussion.
Thank you. I hope
And
we stay in touch.
oh, I'm sure we will. And to the listeners, I will see you on the next Nostalgia Talk. Peace.